Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of
the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everybody to Garden of Doom, and this week we are joined by, well, a wife of a prior guest. This is Nicki Ojeda, also known as Tatiara in the psychic and paranormal circles and professionally. And she came to us through prior guest Jeffrey from Metatrek. We did an excellent show together some months ago. So very happy to get that kind of referral, because if you refer your actual partner in life to me, that's a compliment. But thank you for being on the show.
I'm so happy to be here, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us like your basic bio.
Well, I have been a professional tarot reader and past life reader for 35 years now. I pretty much became who I am at the age of 15. I started working in a magical herb shop, and I learned about essential oils and tarot and herbs like all at the same time. And I sort of have an embodied feel for all the symbolism thereof. And I'm very happy to be able to help people, and they seem to like what I do. So I hope to help future generations and people to just be in touch with their truth and their own magic and deconditioned beautiful self.
Yeah, and the timing is really great for me, and hopefully for the audience as well, because a few months back we had a show dedicated to tarot. And it was great, but of course, like everything else, I forgot half of it. And then, then I've had a couple shows with some people who are involved in voodoo, and tarot is used there as well. And, it's interesting when you learn about these things and learn that, magic is magic. A lot of these things, these techniques, techniques is probably good, are used by lots of different schools of thought and come up in different ways. And sometimes it's the interpretation is different. But then we had John Barnwell, who talked about the arcane wisdom and the divine arcane, and mentioned the divine arcana. And of course, I've forgotten a lot about that. And there you pop up, and it's right there in all your information. So I know that I will be going over some of the same stuff we covered before, but repetition helps me to remember, and there's always new insights. So I'm really excited about that, but I won't, but some of the things you talked about is the divine arcana, that you were able to read about people's past lives. You've been doing this for 35 years. You're able to read basically energetic, I'm going to call them signatures, but you'll correct me if there's a better description, that you're able to find archetypal embodiments in people, and that you actually have workshops to help them figure out those archetypes and how that can impact their lives. And you work with essential oils and healing and just all sorts of, it's like a total package kind of thing. And it looks like you travel as well. Like it's like almost like how people, picture things like the old wagons going from town to town and, dispensing your wisdom. So I don't know. I guess, like you said, you've done over 24 podcasts and you're used to leading. So I think this is where it's a good time to pass the baton to you and say, Nicki Ojeda, please lead on, or Tatiara, however.
You can just call me Nicki.
Okay.
So, archetypes, divine archetypes, the archetypes within us, beyond us, the collective consciousness. So I like to work with both divine archetypes, like something like Medusa or Apollo, or you name it. And then also you have all these archetypes that you find in myth and stories and symbolism. Like, you have the hero and the healer and the trickster and all these things. And I find that we have proclivities to carry certain archetypes within us, but they have stages of expression. And so one of the things that I seek to do with archetypal embodiment workshops is that we embody higher archetypes that can help us shift the energy. Let me give you an example. I have to carry the archetype of the mystic, or I'm not functioning according to my soul contract, and it'll be distorted, probably in a form of an addict or something along those lines. And someone who carries, let's say, the teacher archetype, and they don't own that, it's going to also have a distorted expression, probably in like a critic or someone, they're just not living that actual soul energy. So it's been that's one of the things that makes me different from a lot of tarot and past life readers, is I've had to become trauma informed, and help people really where it counts. Because you can intellectualize and fluff about with your spirits and keep it all up here, everything's ascended, and that is half of it. That's beautiful. But you do eventually have to go in and down and be with what's really there. And a lot of people shy away from that. And I really like to help, because it's not about fixing anything. It's not about proving anything, being anything to become good enough. It's about uncovering the beautiful, good enough light that's already there. And that usually involves looking at our unconscious patterns and beliefs. And to me, that's where magic has its highest use. I'm really all about the inner holistic health, so that your inner magician, your inner teacher, your inner artist, your inner creative, whatever it is that you're carrying and the expression isn't pure, can come out in its natural form for what your soul contracts in your life, fulfillment require of you.
Well, stumbling is my charm, or so I say. So I'm going to stumble through this a little bit, but I imagine that you were introduced to magic in some way. Like you did mention that you were born into this and that it's a calling, and I hear that a lot, that people knew at a young age that somebody was speaking to them, that they had some attachment to a spiritual realm or a luminary or something. They just felt they had a calling. But are you trained in the Wicca school, or is it Egyptian magic? Is it Chinese magic? Is it Indian magic? Is it shamanism? And by Indian, I mean India. Is it shamanism? Is it some sort of different amalgam? Where do you get your start, and where do you get, and what kind of continued training did you get before you sort of made something your own?
Okay, so this is going to be a roundabout answer.
Okay.
So first of all, I wasn't born into a family who was receptive to this. I was born into a very strict and rather toxic Christian scenario. And I wrote about that in an essay in the book, Goodbye, Jesus, I've Gone Home to Mother, by Oberon Zell, who was the OG original pagan. But that's another story. And so I had to fight to be who I am. I tried to drink the Kool-Aid, carried my little Bible, worried about going to hell. By the time I was 10, I was over it. Okay. And then I was always drawn to the mystical, whether it was sword and sorcery or like Ronnie James Dio and all that stuff. It's all part of what led me to what resonates with me.
You were the first in line, not the last in line.
Yeah, exactly. And I often have to do that. I have to be the pioneer, but that's another story too. So, of course it started as a rebellion against all that and that mountain of rage. How do I work through that? So I was initiated in Wicca, and that's beautiful, but I am not a tradition oriented person. I take all those techniques. I've been doing yoga since I was 19, and I take the best of things and I've woven it together. And I've been reading Carl Jung since I was 10 or 11 because he was a mystic and he was in touch with the numinous. Now, there's a lot of his stuff that you could call outdated, and it's true, but there's these nuggets of truth. And then the people who've gone beyond and worked with that has really helped me design something that is aligned with how our consciousness is evolving. Because it's like, I like to take ancient practices with these updated, cutting edge practices in these workshops, but they basically are a type of shamanism as well, simply because there is no other word for how we go between the worlds, but we go into our own world. And it's like beyond the mind with a symbolic mindset. So I've woven all these tendencies together into my own thing, and some people say, oh, you shouldn't mix modalities. And I don't agree with one caveat. And this is one of the harmful things of mixing modalities is when you don't go deep enough to do the healing work. You just jump to the next thing. And that's what creates the spiritual bypassing that we often see. And that's how the depth of meditation and depth psychology mixed with magic, mixed with our own unique signature gives us so much, because it honors how everyone's different, and that's the thing. There's no one formula for everyone. So I hope to help people have the sort of exploration of going deep and transmuting and alchemizing the energy into its highest available expression.
Yeah, I agree with that because I mean, secularization and subdivisions and, sort of separation, that I think it doesn't work with spirituality. I mean, if you're trying to say this is the only right way to do it, you sort of defeated your end game purpose to begin with. So I think it's wrong to say only Wicca is the way to do it, or only the Algonquin is the way to do it, or only this is the way. And I'm picking out those names just because that's what came to my head, not because I know a lot of Wicca who are saying it's the only way, or I know any Algonquin saying ours is the only way. They're not. I mean, but we do hear, certain Catholics or Orthodox Jews, or every religion you have, this is the way, this is your key. I mean, that's sort of the business model. This is your key to salvation. I think with spirituality, it's got to be, like you said, not one size fits all. There's nothing wrong with borrowing from the past traditions, because there's 100,000 years plus embedded into these traditions, and some of them are differentiated by the climates, the environments, the animals that they came into contact with, those that were helpful and those that were harmful. Some places the wolf might have been helpful, and some places the wolf might have been the biggest threat that you faced, other than, plague. So, that's where I think the distinctions are. And it's wrong to dismiss them out of hand, but I think you're right that there's no one right way. That's one of the few things I've learned in the 3 years of this journey of being a completely secular, Western educated, rather mundane, middle-aged, suburban American.
Right. And, as humans, we are meaning-making machines. So I work with people who are atheists. We go into a symbolic mindset. So they aren't hard atheists, I'm sure, but we can tap into this, and it can be purely psychological, it can be spiritual, but I find that the divine is the key. You'll get you there, whatever gives you meaning. So, having this be the right way, that type of philosophy, that's very toxic. And I would, warn anyone to beware of anything that suggests we should all be the same. And here's my difference between religion and spirituality. So with religion, you are pretty much venerating someone else's spiritual experience. At its best, it's guidance, it's inspiration. I'm not knocking religion per se. It's what humans do with it. Now, spirituality is techniques that will foster you to have your own spiritual experience. It will foster you to have that personal gnosis of the energy behind, hey, there's more to this, and it's very magical, but it's also indigenous to our own soul. These are the best of the wisdom, like you were saying, all those years of wisdom. It's like, yes, take the best of that, and then there's these things that just have to be left off, because we are evolving and we are changing, and we're supposed to. And practices that may have been the best thing, let's just say, be fruitful and multiply.
Right.
2,000 plus years ago, that was good advice, in the desert and living that life, and you needed it. It's not necessarily good advice now. So we need to just take stock of what it is that we're believing, without questioning it. And which brings me to a whole nother part of my work, which is helping you discern what your true voice is and what is fear conditioning and, other people's beliefs that we've internalized so hard and have never even stopped to think, do I even really feel that? And so I call that your inner bell when it's clear. It's being aligned with your high spirit self, yet your deep soul truth. It does not exclude the body. It does not exclude the earth plane. I do not malign the lower chakras. That all contains magic. That is a false distinction, to create these hardcore opposites. It's just a false distinction. For example, like I respect science, but I don't want dogma in my science or my spirituality. It's got to have that open, this is where we're at right now. This is knowledge and it's beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
And I like to weave these things together that people have, they do themselves a disservice by saying either or. So I foster a both and consciousness, wherever it serves, which is a lot more than we give credit to. So that self-exploration, are these voices in my head really me, or is this just some, external thing that really it's time to alchemize that and transmute that into my inner wise one, which we all have.
So when you mention Carl Jung, however you pronounce it, it's hard to talk about him without also talking about Joseph Campbell. It's like they almost go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And archetypes. That's sort of Joseph Campbell's was Hero with 1,000 Names or Hero with 1,000 Faces. I mean, but it's that's really focusing on one archetype, but in it, he actually talks about several archetypes in there. Are you talking about the similar archetypes? I feel like yours might be broader.
Let's just say it is broader, but it still includes that. Absolutely. And the hero's journey is just such a beautiful thing. Some people, they want to dismiss it because they look at it incorrectly. They'll say it's too masculine. It's like you just switch it. It's just a symbolism, and it's not a one-time thing. It's over and over, circles within circles. But it's kind of beyond words too. Just how it can be very, especially in hindsight, it's very enlightening and really good for writing stories and stuff like that too. Of course, movies, we all know that.
For sure,
but
yeah.
I love Joseph Campbell too. Wise man.
Yeah, I agree. We started way back when with Divine Arcana and Divine, and you mentioned Apollo. Well, everyone knows Apollo, Greek god, son of Zeus, brother of Athena, sort of, but sort of, very much similar to, Osiris and Isis together, which are, of course, you can tie them to Adam and Eve, and and Osiris is tied to pretty much everyone everywhere, which means Apollo is tied to everyone everywhere. But Medusa. So Medusa is a gorgon and is, a monster and, or maybe just misunderstood. I don't know which, probably. I mean, somebody has to write the book from Medusa's point of view.
I'd love to talk on it if you want me to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm wondering, because that one took me by surprise. Like, even if you said Lilith or Hel, Hel, I think I would know exactly where you're coming from, but Medusa threw me off. So yeah, please espouse it a little bit.
So I did this workshop. I'm going to talk about two different workshops I did. One with Medusa in it and one had Apollo. So I did this it was a big workshop. It was out there. It was called Reconciling Athena and Medusa. Now this one was primarily geared toward women. Now, keep in mind that these myths were already ancient when they were written down, and then they were written down more from the point of view of the patriarchal attitudes, where, Medusa had to be raped or whatever. We don't know that, or if she was in Athena's temple was the thing, and Athena turned her into the Gorgon. She was a beautiful woman, but she apparently got raped in the temple, by, oh my gosh, I can't remember, was it Perseus? Anyway, I forget the name, but the point is that,
well, Perseus killed her. I think that I think the rape was Zeus.
Yeah.
He's usually the prime rapist.
Was making love. The fact is that we went in there because this is a good example of how these archetypes have different expressions, even the divine ones. So, like bright-eyed Athena, goddess of wisdom. Well, she's also symbolizes Athena influenced. She gets blinded by her influences, and in this case, like internalized toxic patriarchal values that hurt women. And this workshop symbolized how women play the part of Athena and they hurt other women, and it's self-perpetuating. So we were able to go in there in a shamanic way and have, Medusa recommit to being a priestess of Athena. I need your wisdom. And Athena gives Medusa the olive branch. And we're all crying because it's so powerful, because we see how we internalize these images, and we only, in secular mythological studies, we only look at things from one facet, generally speaking. Right. But there's just so much more symbolizing pretty much psychological and psycho-spiritual states of human existence. And so this deep exploration, like beyond the intellect of getting in there, it just shifts energies where it's like you see, wow, I've been carrying this jealousy for another woman when she shines, and that's just false conditioning. And that's the blind Athena. Whereas, Athena, back to her bright-eyed self, she wants to empower all of the women, empower everyone, not just women. But in this case, that was just the focus of the workshop.
I understand. So, it was not about the historical or the strict mythology of Medusa. It was more about Medusa as the archetype, as it was sort of a redemption, see things from her perspective, ask for forgiveness, accept forgiveness, work together kind of thing.
But it does include the mythology too, just not as much the, later interpretations, And then, so for the one regarding Apollo, this was more of an open to everybody, embody your artist archetype was the title of this one. And we went, and this was for creatives and people who had blocks and claiming their artist or, stuck in creativity, that sort of thing. So we went in there and started off with Hephaestus, who has the limp.
Yep.
And we tapped into, it's hard for me to remember exactly what we did, but we tapped into that vulnerability as the best part of a story. It's like you bring your vulnerability to your art. And then Apollo transmutes that, and he shoots the arrow out into the stars, and then the 9 muses are dancing and just rain inspiration down. But it's so much more involved and beautiful, and it's so beyond the mind that I sort of forget exactly what happens. But everybody was so affected in it. And what it does is, on an unconscious level, it clears those pathways. It clears it of debris from just false beliefs. And it's amazing how much one workshop can shift it. Sometimes it's a very subtle thing that unfolds over time. And sometimes it's like a lightning bolt of wow. And it's just different for everybody. There's no right way. But the point is that exploration in general is something that's missing that could really behoove us all. Because we're so stuck to our screens and we don't use our imagination in an alchemical way. We don't. There's a difference between just idle fantasizing, which can also be useful in figuring out what matters to you, and then the spirit-infused imagination. It's a beautiful realm that the more you allow that in, the more that you realize you're always creating. You may as well be creating with a little more consciousness of what your soul signature would like of you, that expression that will be fulfilling, and it's automatically fulfilling to the universe. That's the big part of it.
And
when you're really fulfilling your truth, it fulfills something in the universe that we need from you.
I'm guessing that the term soul signature has something to do with these energetic signatures that you're finding, and that this also leads into maybe an education, that you are educating someone on their own past lives to help them deal with this current life. So
yes.
Sort of like explain the process, if there is one, and how you can determine, like, I don't know, maybe give like an example of, the anatomy of what you do with a student, patient, client, subject, whatever, to go from meeting them to identifying the signature, the past lives, and then where you take it from there.
Sure. So I do readings online, and I do events as well. And the process is the same because it's non-physical, it's energetic. The person's in front of me, they're called the querent. And so I use 3 tarot cards for my doorway in. And the intention of that is to narrow it down to the past life that is the most relevant for now. And I have been doing it so long that it's like, I don't get psychic stuff at me when people just come up. It's the intention. I switch it on like a radio dial, and receive it. So there's the intention that what I see in those first 3 cards, that's the pure message. And whether I do that, whether it's a tarot or a past life reading, because that is the pure message before I even want to know what you want to know about or what you want insight on. And that often is like, wow, it gives me so much if I don't know the question ahead of time. But then I do like to know where they need, energetic checks and balances. So then once I'm there in the 3 cards, I just sort of go in. I go in with the visuals, but also with my bank of symbolic associations. And what I've learned at this point is to just shut up and talk.
Okay.
I just start talking, and I just tell them what I see. It is like a movie. I see the life, and I start to see the pattern that is the one that needs to be shifted. I can give you an example of someone who had survivor's guilt in another life, and it was playing out in their current life of just this feeling of undeserving, and it's usually something like that. It's so like psychological and deep, but it's spiritual because it may not have, oftentimes they do reflect in our life circumstances, but sometimes it's a pattern you can't discern the cause. And that's often the ones that will come up. And it's just like, I call it like something we just came in with. It's just like a groove. And we can shift that, and having that empowerment, we can, and that insight, we can shift our trajectories just a little bit more, I don't mean to suggest that everything's always easy,
Yeah.
it's often a path, so I do mentoring and the personalized archetypal embodiment workshops that are based on the readings, and I do optional, personalized, customized essential oil blends or flower essences based on the readings as well. And that is to assist in energy work, to assist in the energetic checks and balances, to create that wholeness and to reclaim usually pieces of self and uncover and, just like get false perspectives. I was thinking what Joseph Campbell said, the scales fell from his eyes. Mm-hmm. It's often something like that when we get, and it often resonates to people. They tell me that really resonates and it makes sense on some level that, and it's fulfillment. It gives them power just to hear it.
Yeah, I imagine that there's stages, and it's probably not as strict as 5 stages of this or a 12-step program. It's probably different for different people. But at some point, you get introduced to yourself. You need to recognize it. You need to accept it. And then I guess at some point, depending on who you are and what you're hearing or meeting or being introduced to, you have to decide whether you like yourself or not, and then whether you need to lean out of yourself or lean into yourself. And then I guess that there's trainings on how to do either one of those things. And I guess that's where the oils and continuing sessions come in. So, first of all, am I just putting words into your mouth that are nonsense, or is that actually semi-close enough to the truth?
It makes sense to me. And as far as going into or out of yourself, it's always going to require both at different times. A lot of our spirituality is to up and out. It really is. And that's why, you find people just saying, oh, good vibes only. And that's a toxic positivity. I mean, it's true that, good vibes only for the party tonight. Yeah, absolutely. But you can't deny what's there. It's about radical self-acceptance. Otherwise, you are not going to be able to alchemize and shift that.
Right.
Because
good vibes only is nihilism. It's not realistic. It's not part of this world. And, and period. Even if you're like a quadrillion billionaire, that doesn't mean your health is good. It doesn't mean your mental health is good. It doesn't mean your relationships are good.
And in this society, we have this thing, there's this subtle or not so subtle adage that if you're not happy, there's something wrong. And it's just not true. Who said we're supposed to be happy all the time? It's not life. And there's another thing too. Fear and anxiety are not enemies. They are teachers. Doesn't mean it's pleasant. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't seek to shift it. That's not what I'm saying. But we tend to judge ourselves for having negative emotions, tend to judge ourselves for having these challenges. And so there's certain areas we can actually go into the body, like somatic practices. Like I work with the vagus nerve a lot. If anyone is interested, the book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk can really go into a lot of the body practices that we do to dislodge trauma, and kind of like we don't have to even get stuck on what these stories are. It's just the raw energetics begins to move. And that's one thing that the way we are told, sit down when you were a little kid, be still, don't feel your feelings. It gets stuck in there in ways. It might be a simplified way of trying to express this, but moving that energy is the most empowered thing that you can do. And it does require radical self-acceptance. That's the one thing that I'm, here to try to help people do. Like I have the North Node in Aquarius. I'm here to sort of be the pioneer, the way shower, the guide. I'll stick my head up and be weird for you, but I can only do it for so long. You're going to have to own your energy eventually.
You're like Virgil. You'll help only so much.
Yeah, it's just how it works.
Is the divine arcana tied to the archetypes? Do they match one another? So if I asked you to say, who are the divine arcana and who are the archetypes, is it basically the same answer? Because instead of asking you two questions, I'll ask you one or I'll ask you two. And either way, whatever your answer is, I've already asked the questions.
So, the archetypes are more than that, but yes, it is included in that. That whole major arcana is like a hero's journey in a way. And so the major arcana of the tarot deck sort of reflects bigger picture problems that you're going through, deeper, higher things, it's like a hero's journey microcosm in a way. And the minor arcana, the cups, wands, pentacles, swords, these are more like actual movable things that are happening in your physical life. But it can also be, so the pentacles are physical and the cups are more like emotional or psychic, and the swords are going to be more like thoughts and intellects, and wands is like action and movement and what are you fighting for and that kind of thing.
My understanding of tarot is that with when the cards are drawn, it very much the same card can mean many different things, especially in conjunction with other cards. The combination and the shapes and even the direction of them can change the interpretations quite a bit. So one, the hero might actually be the hero, but in some combination, it might be the hero is on a fool's quest. The hero might be Don Quixote as opposed to, say King Arthur.
The hero is always on another fool's quest. Always. It never stops. But I do get what you're saying. And so the less of a hard and fast meaning you have for a card, the better. It's helpful in the beginning, though, when you're learning them. But yeah, they're like, imagine each card is like a disco ball with all these facets of possible meanings. And I wrote a blog called Why I Don't Use Tarot Reversals Anymore, and it explains my holographic way of reading, where the other cards will reflect the same meaning that a reversed card would. Because, when you're reading client after client like I do at events, having cards go upside down, it does not feel right to me, because you don't have time to shuffle them all back. And it just never felt right to me. It felt like something that was tacked on in the 1800s or something. So I don't use tarot reversals at all. It's okay if people do. It's fine. I just find that will show themselves, because it's like the archetypes. They have their different levels of expression, whether it's, like for archetypes, it's like a dormant expression or distorted or finally divine. And in a way, the cards can show that too, where you might be stuck in a certain area, or this might be the energy you need, like the impetus to move something, or it could be like the goal that you are working toward and beginning to own, if that makes sense. And the other cards help to inform that.
It does, but I'm trying to bring this down to more of a brick level, more, street level. So maybe I'll ask this, and hopefully it's a better question. Who are the archetypes? Which figures, characters from mythos would people recognize, and what do they typically correspond to? So, we have religious and divine archetypes, like even Mother Mary. That's a mother. Mm-hmm. In the card, the tarot, she's like, the Empress. She's pregnant, and you think of kings. Those are all in the tarot deck. There's kings, and then you have what kind of king? Is it King Midas? Is it King David? Right. So they're all very complicated, and it's very hard for me to simplify it too much without doing it a disservice. But I'm trying to illustrate that the symbolic mindset is the key, and being able to intuit and feel, what they are saying related to the person's energy. Like, not all readers are psychic. I am. And so that probably affects how I've already known that I've been different than the average tarot reader. I had my first past life memories when I was 5 years old of Egypt, and seeing it in a magazine, being distraught about it being all broken and everything. And my mom's just like patting me on the head, just totally not accepted. But all of that, it's just very hard for me perhaps to put it into simple terms, okay. But about the symbology. When you are talking to a querent and you've done your readings and you felt their energies and you feel this signature of the past lives, does it emerge to you almost like a photograph or a movie? Like how, does it come in order? Like would it come? You'd see someone in ancient Egypt first, then Rome, and then perhaps England, and then the New World or whatever. The New World, silly word, but North America. Or is it something that is it more cluttered than that? You've got to sort of use all the tools at your disposal to sort of sort it out. Well, usually I don't focus on more than one life at a time, but if I do, it's usually only two. And no, they are not necessarily linear, but they will have the things in common that give more clues toward the pattern that's ready to be transmuted, with divine assistance, with the assistance of our higher self, inner self, deeper self. I really counsel them according to where they feel their difficulties and where the stuckness is, or if they just want to feel how they can empower themselves more. It isn't always about, the traumatic event of the past, but they often inform how we go about things, and it's doesn't necessarily come at me in linear ways. And it is like a movie, but it'll also sometimes just come like words without images, or just energies that I'm doing my best to put into words. But generally I see it like a movie. Do you ever come upon someone that in their past life that their life was just mostly great, and like just learning that their past self had such a successful life, however they define success, that alone helps them in this iteration? Yeah, I can see that, because sometimes it shows them. I have a couple examples where they have gifts that they haven't claimed, like especially something like being a leader or being their full self, or, not following dictates that are toxic to their soul, sort of thing. And there's also been people who have been very successful in a past life, but they were very, cruel, or they mistreated others, the Scrooge archetype. That, or someone even far more powerful, right. Like, I'll just go ahead and say one of my own. I was a Mayan king, and I just had them killed one after another because I could, Right. And so how do I deal with that facet of my disco ball? Well, put it this way: if someone's going to mess with me, they will have to deal with that. You know what I mean? So I put it to the best use possible, because I'm a sweet, gentle, beautiful person. But if you mess with me, you're going to get
Censaro, that was his name, the Mayan king, and so it's all about shadow work too. This is a whole big thing where we reclaim parts of ourselves, that we've rejected, and they're not all junk. Okay, they're the shadow gold is like reclaim gifts that get repressed along with these proclivities that are, sometimes they're socially unacceptable. Sometimes they are downright harmful. But there's like an example, if you're a natural dancer and you're born into like a Southern Baptist family where dancing is of the devil or something, then that's going to be what we call shadow gold. It gets stuck in the basement along with these other things. So how do we integrate these energies instead of pushing them away? We often go in there and like, I'll be like, look at this dragon, it's like, and then you realize it's been trying to protect you, and you start talking to it. And like, it's almost like it turns into this sweet little Pikachu face and something. You say, thank you. And like given these energies a different job to do in your psyche, say, thank you. I know you were trying to protect me, but you've become a maladaptive pattern now. So you're going to sit here and you're dragon, soul dragon. You're going to listen to the soul from now on. And, this is like that Jungian active imagination. And I don't mean to make that sound simple because it usually takes a few tries, but if the more we integrate those disparate parts of ourselves and put them toward their highest expression possible, the more we are whole, the more we are self-actualized and able to tap into the gifts that we have, regardless of what Betty Joe down the street has to say or her opinion about us,
No, that was great, because my next question was, when you meet this past life person, this Censar or the dragon or whomever, can you communicate with them? And you've answered that. You said, yes, you can. You can communicate with them and learn to control them or adapt. You had mentioned essential oils are part of the healing process. Is this also, I'm sure it's different for everyone, but do the oils have consistent properties across the board and you just use a different combination of oils for different personalities? Or is one oil that might be healing for someone not be healing for another?
Both of those are true, but they're only, unless someone's allergic to it, they're not going to be detrimental to them, but there are some that will be more useful.
So they're just neutral. Okay, good.
Yeah, based on their energies. And, that's an optional service. Not everybody likes messing with that. It's not appropriate for everyone. I also have flower essences. Those are, you just take those under your tongue and they work on emotional states and dislodging emotional patterns. But I create them based on the energies that I see need to be moved, that whole checks and balances thing toward their wholeness. But there's like this phrase, I have a voodoo practitioner who says, I can do this for you, but you have to work the point. And that's what I say, with the oils, you have to work the point. I'm just giving you a tool and some ideas about how to use them. I often offer affirmations and meditational exercises for when we're not going into the deep, still working on several levels. Because it's all about making that unconscious conscious, like I was just saying, and reclaiming so that you don't have these old energies. They're a drain on your vital forces, and it's a great work to integrate your parts and have them all more in aligned with your soul essence.
What are some of the... I'm sorry, finish.
I just want to say, I always feel like I make it sound so easy, but it is a path that requires curiosity and willingness.
What are some of the most commonly used oils, and what are they associated with?
Okay, so I do notice that people will have these feelings of being like polluted or dirty or something, and I will often say something like lavender, which has purifying and sort of peaceful sorts of properties to it. And someone who's always stressed, like chamomile. But again, I'm mixing these together and they become holographic more than their parts. And sandalwood for those, like someone like me who, if I didn't own the mystic, I would be not in a good place. And owning the mystic is not easy. And so sometimes it's that for this person's archetype. It might not be easy for them to own the teacher, the healer, the guide, whatever it is that they are carrying, the creative, the leader, when they've always been a follower. So there's several different combinations of oils. I also have a whole line of zodiac oils. So all the signs, it isn't necessarily for your sun sign, but when you want to tap into that energy, it's the same concept. So working with essential oils has always been like woven in to what I've been doing. So, something like for reclaiming the mystic, sandalwood, frankincense, and myrrh, those are like, they have their own, symbols. We know what frankincense and myrrh are, so they have this sort of symbolic meaning. And then I would add more personalized things. Like, for me, I'm happier when I'm in an aesthetically pleasing environment because I feel like I'm changing things. So I would add like ylang ylang, which is such a beautiful flower, or vanilla, because I want to bring spirit down into the earth plane to make a difference. I don't want to just keep it up here. I'm all about bringing it in and making our spiritual practices useful, embodying our spiritual path, having it mean something, make a difference in how we go about our world, how we think. And then it starts to shine the more we embody that natural light of who we are. It starts to shine through our eyes, our thoughts, our words, our deeds, our being. And again, I always jump like 10 steps ahead. But
that's okay.
It's
I want to play a game, and this shouldn't be hard because I cannot imagine that being married to Jeffrey from Trek and knowing what his show's about and knowing my past conversations with him, that you haven't already done this together anyway. So hopefully there's practice for it. Or if not, I don't know why not. But which characters from Star Trek match to which archetypes?
Okay. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is in The Enemy Within, when Kirk is split into two. Mm-hmm. So we tend to simplify it and say good Kirk and evil Kirk. As the show plays out, we see it's far more complicated than that. Mm-hmm. So the evil Kirk is Kirk's shadow, but he also has shadow gold, so his leader is in there. Because, the good Kirk becomes ineffectual. He can't lead. He can't be a captain. He can't make decisions, So though he might be a gentle one, he might be a follower or whatever, he'll have he's like another shadow with his gold. And so there's that. And then, Spock he's like the wise one in so many ways. But in other ways, McCoy's going to be the wise one. Right. And they come through from different paths. So, you can see that Spock has these higher proclivities, but then he kind of doesn't always have his feet on the ground of, what's actually going on, or he fights it when he does. So it just shows how we need them all in balance, because McCoy and his emotionalism, his sensualism, and his, he sees things as they are. He tells it like it is. These are all parts, and they symbolize parts of us, and they symbolize, like, I'm sure you talked about with Jeff, how they symbolize higher energies as well, like the gods of Olympus, and you could even go so far as to say Spock's a messiah figure, and it goes really deep. And,
well, he did die and get resurrected after the Genesis project. So, I mean, there is that. At some point, he became the Messiah. That's for sure. He also was able to put himself into that yogi-like sleep state that it would appear to be dead unless you knew any better. I remember that.
Right, much. And he mind melds with V'ger and gets all of that information through the whole cosmos. And so, yeah. He's definitely got the wise one, the sorcerer, and all of that. But it's a little bit different, so he's not like a druid or a witch, but McCoy is. He's a medicine man or a shaman. You know what I'm saying?
Right. They're both scientific characters, but one is more the mathematician, and the one is more the medicine man kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we need them all. That's a good, right there is a good metaphor for how we need all of our parts in balance, and being kind to ourselves as humans, because they're never going to be perfectly. It's all about the journey. Like, we're here to climb these mountains. We're not here to have someone put us at the top of the mountain. And it's like, some people say it's not the journey, it's the destination. Well, it's both. Right. I mean, it's not the destination, it's the journey, but it is both, because that's how we get our strength, So getting inspiration even from pop culture figures is a worthy thing. If all about tapping into that symbolic mindset, if it reminds you of who you really are inside.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk was both Thor and Loki. He was the schemer and uber intelligent, but he also, a lot of times he sort of led with his hammer. The two different kinds of hammers, and could be very impulsive as well.
Very trickster. If you think of like the whole poker thing in a piece of the action Fizbin, he made that up on the spot. That's like a Loki trickster move right there.
Exactly. The whole Kobayashi Maru, he cheated.
Yeah.
He rewired it. He hacked it or something.
Yeah, and sometimes we have to do that because there's this phrase. It's like there's malleum prohibitum and there's malleum in se. And what that means is like there's these things we aren't supposed to do that are prohibited by society, but they're not actually evil. And then there's malleum in se, which is like it's by nature pretty much evil and destructive. So it's all about bending the rules. That's what I was trying to get at in a sort of a rather highfalutin way of getting to he's doing these things for the greater good.
Right. It's like if you're at home at dinner with your family and you want to let your 14-year-old have a sip of wine, that is not necessarily evil. To get your 14-year-old uber drunk and give them the impression it's okay to do that all the time and make a fool of themselves is wrong.
And then say, "Go drive the car, honey. You got this."
Yeah, that too.
Exactly. That's a good. Yeah.
Here are the keys. Go have fun, kids. We don't need that car anyway. Yeah. So, what do you think? All right, we're going to continue with Star Trek because there's so many shows, but I'm not going to go too far because I am not nearly the Star Trek aficionado that your Jeff is, and probably not that you are as a result, or maybe not as a result. Yeah. So how is Picard? Which archetype does Picard shift from Kirk? Because he's clearly an evolution from Kirk. They have some things in common, but not all. It's almost like Picard is more New Testament and Kirk is more Old Testament.
Right, and Riker carries a lot of that.
Yeah.
So Picard
well, he's the sun.
More like
He's the sun. He's the bridge.
Exactly, and Picard he's almost got like this statesman kind of vibe. He's almost like royalty in a way. He's sort of a step beyond, So he's more like one who's going to lead by example, But he does have that humbleness when needed. So he does have the king energy, but it's very different. Like he's more like a king who stays in a castle, not like a Viking king who gets out there on the battlefield. But he does sometimes. So they always overlap. It's true. But
right.
He's more like he's got the diplomat, the royal, the inspiring one, the one who can carry that. There's a certain word I'm looking for. The words tend to go away.
Gravitas. Gravitas.
Yes, gravitas. He's got the gravitas. Yes, he's definitely one to follow. He's an example to follow. And Riker's a little more earthy, as we shall say, So it's really Kirk is kind of split into those two in many ways.
Okay. So then we'll move on to Janeway.
Janeway. She's so Artemis. She's out there in her element. And she's definitely a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants to check out every nebula. It's like, are you trying to get home, or are you really trying to check out every single nebula? So, in some ways, she's like a curious cat. Archetypes aren't always very high. She has to see what's in there. She has to check everything out. She wants to know. She's like an eternal student, and a teacher too.
Right, and like the cat, the curiosity may have gotten the best of her, and sent her on a journey that Odysseus would have said, that's much worse than what happened to me.
Great.
All right, Cisco.
Well, of course, automatically the word, what does the emissary mean? He connects worlds. He's of more than one world, and he becomes more than he ever thought he would be. So he's almost got that, almost like a superhero who doesn't know they're a superhero, who eventually realizes that, like if Superman never really knew what he was, but he kept getting clues. it's not that obvious. Superman would eventually find out a lot quicker than Cisco would, but he sort of symbolizes how, we have our higher self and we can tap into it or not, but there's always this sort of like a soul-aligned destiny that when we are following it, it's like, yes, yes, yes. And he sort of has to embody that in order to be who he really is. So I can't really put that into one word right now, but he's someone who has to own that they're more than they ever thought they were. So superhero was something that came to mind, but
maybe like one of the mutants from the X-Men, that their powers develop slowly over time, and for a while.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, like I always thought the word mutant was a little strong, but more like shapeshifter, or more, someone who's more than. And that does symbolize us and our, uncovering of the soul and reclaiming that self with a capital S.
If you're not limited to one word or one description, one archetype, would it help to take like 3 cards and say, these are the 3 cards that represent Kirk, or is that just too simple?
I have my cards here. Let's see what I'll let you know if it's too simple or not.
Okay, cool.
If I was going to draw 3 cards for Kirk, what's going to come up, please? Interesting. So I have the High Priestess, I have the 6 of Wands, and the Page of Cups. Now, the High Priestess is like, this tells me that he has wisdom, but he's also very much in touch with how he feels, and it's not all about going by the book, for sure. It's like a higher echelon of wisdom, guidance. And then the 6 of Wands is he's ready to take action. He's got a plan of action, and it's almost always going to work because he's aligned. He's embodied his whole captain self, And the Page of Cups, he's a ladies' man. He's a lover, He's definitely not, sometimes he's doing that for the sake of some other cause, but you can tell that he's kind of married to his ship in many ways. And so, yes, he's sort of maybe, I don't want to say an emotional beginner, but he can only take it so far. So that's why it's at the page level, So that's what I got for Kirk.
That's very cool.
That's just me putting into what I see as well.
Okay. Now, Kirk and you are not strangers, so people could say that was so. But you and me aren't strangers, and I know the audience there wants me to say, do it for me, and I'm struggling. Am I brave enough to do it? And you know what? I am brave enough to do it, so do me.
All right. So I will ask you, would you like more insight on your trajectory and how you can make adjustments to it, or would you like more insight on patterns that could serve you to be shifted?
Wow.
Because one's tarot and one's past life.
Let's do the tarot.
Okay. Give me just a second here.
Yeah, of course. So this is live. We didn't practice this. Obviously, I'm springing this on her, but of course I sprang it on myself first because I've been having a little argument with my inner voices. Do I want to do this on the air live without knowing what the answers are going to be? And I'm just like, screw it. Yes, I do.
Okay, so you have a definite period of focusing on either your health or finances, your world of the material. Upgrades of that nature are on your mind, or they're on everyone's mind, granted, but there's something to do with, you're going to have to change the way you think about something, and it's going to require you to say, you know what, I actually don't know anything about this new phase. I have a new mentality. I'm willing to have a new mentality. I got to change how I'm thinking about this so that I can go ahead and have these new placements that are more fulfilling to my physical realm fall into place better, i.e. I'm not going to be in my way mentally as much. And right now there could be it's almost like the final battle of something mentally before the next phase. And you'll have to be comfortable with not knowing and with being a beginner again. Maybe a new endeavor mentally.
There's definitely something to that. There's a whole lot of a new, a new approach on a bunch of things. I think people who've been listening to the show for the entirety of it probably have gotten clues along the way, if not outright know exactly what it is. But every now and then, old parts of me, it's like if I'm a running back, there's versions of me who are the linebackers and the cornerbacks that are still chasing me, and every now and then they tackle me, and every now and then I fumble. So yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. Is the other part not possible to do now? The other aspect, the
past life part?
Yeah.
I can do that.
Oh yeah. Oh, this is good. This is fun.
I'm only this is just dipping a toe in, y'all.
No, of course. I mean, we all want to find out that we were, King Arthur or something like that, or Conan the Barbarian or whatever.
I have a joke. We're not all princesses, darling.
Right.
Okay. And I will need another second to go in here.
That's fine. It's like if it turns out I was like an Axumite spice dealer, that's fine too. That would be awesome. It's like it'll turn out that I was like random farmer number 3, in Harapan or something. Or henchman for the Joker.
Okay, so you were the son of an Italian winemaker in the 1500s.
Okay, I like this.
And you were going to, take over the family business in every way possible. And you had plans to marry this beautiful woman who you love. And there's just plenty everywhere. And there's an unforeseen situation that happens. I almost feel like it could be like a volcanic eruption or something. I wouldn't be surprised. And everything changed. And it's complete loss. Okay. Now this can't hurt you anymore. This is in the past, right? Now, why would that come up? Because there could be one little tiny unconscious pattern that says, maybe I shouldn't put my all into this. Maybe there's that slight fear of loss, of putting all yourself into something and having it taken away from you. And I'm not saying this is what you think about every day. This is just an underlying pattern that once we address that, it's pretty much saying, yeah, actually your soul is calling for you to put your all into this next phase of your endeavors, your life, your business, your relationship, your health, your world. If there's no reason to hold back anymore.
Well, at least that was an act of God. It's not like I didn't botch it. I didn't ruin the whole thing. So I'm not mad at past life me. I don't know what he or she did. Well, I was a he. What he did after the disaster, after that. But I like the part about Italian wine.
Yeah, I love Italian wine too. But I also think that you lost some people, so there could just be a little bit of armoring around your heart, that could just be a little affirmation where it's I open my heart to my vulnerability, yet I'm always protected. Just affirmations can make a big difference, but they are not enough, but they help. Oh, yeah. So I always include them.
Yeah, once bitten, twice shy. That kind of that for sure. Yeah, a couple times.
That's as far as I can go on a mini past life reading live.
I think that's fair.
Go a lot deeper, but
yeah.
Man, I want some Valpolicella to drink right now all of a sudden.
I know, a little Amarone or a nice little Barolo, something.
Ooh,
yeah. The Italian wines are delicious. Though I don't really like the Sangiovese, but I guess that's not what this show's about. All right. I have taken us completely off course, which is okay. But since you are the expert in this area, I'd like you to bring us back to on course so that we can, get to a landing spot that makes sense.
Sure. And I also find that it has a way of being on course somehow in one way or another, So did you have a particular question that you were going to leave me with, or did you want me to just talk back about how?
I don't know. You said that you studied Wicca. Obviously, you're familiar with voodoo. Were there any particular shamanistic traditions that were attractive to you or that you were introduced to?
I don't even really talk about it publicly. This is the third time, but I have also practiced voodoo. I lived in New Orleans for, almost 2 decades. But it is a personal thing. It's not something I include in my professional work just because I'm not initiated. I only use it to help me with my depths, like I was talking about before, that mountain of rage. How do I transmute that mountain of rage for not being accepted for who I am and being told I'm going to go to hell and all that stuff. And yes, there's a voodoo spirit, Azili Danto. She helped me through that. And that's what you call a dark goddess, just like, the Morrigan or Hecate or Kali. I work with those a lot with the deep stuff. And when you say dark, it's not evil. It's hidden. Right. They're mystical things hidden, and they will show you what's been hidden. It's like an empowering piece of the puzzle. So a lot of those, drumming and going in. I have been through someone who was a bona fide shaman, and that was very informative and influential. So I do draw from many different sources, but I don't shy from the healing path. That's one thing that people who jump from tradition ought to make sure they watch out for, is that you're getting to the nitty gritty and not just skating on the surface. But yeah, it's amazing. See, so that element of ritual, just like let's just say back in the Greek plays, they weren't just like spectators in plays. They were more like, divine ritual, mythic enactments where these energies were embodied and they became those gods and goddesses. There's an element of that is missing for us. And we touch into it in little ways, especially if we have a good creative outlet. You can get there, people who have told me they get there just by like running and stuff like that. It's tapping into some just elements of who we are that have been neglected. And shamanic practices or shamanic journey needs some more words, because I've started to call it a moving meditation. But that's even a lame term, because it's all about bringing these different elements together that we've artificially separated over time,
Well, you want lame, Spiritual Roadshow, that's lame. And I think that's actually the name of a reality series on some network. I'm not kidding. But that really trivializes something that shouldn't be trivialized.
Right. It's like, I like to, one of the things I do is I take things that I have to do and I turn them into sacraments. I take everyday activities and I turn them into rituals. Like when I clean the house, I'm doing energy work. When I take a shower, I'm doing energy work. When I'm preparing food, I'm creating future, health, bounty, and all this and that. And every morning when I stir the coffee, every morning I stir like cinnamon and honey into mine and Jeffrey's coffee. I'm stirring in shiny sparkles of love, happiness, health, prosperity, kindness, love, all that. Those things start to really help, but you have to do it not like you're going through the motions. And that just takes time to tap into. It's the symbolic mindset. It really is. It's the mythical, metaphorical, magical, symbolic mindset that we all have access to. And we're not supposed to all do it the same way. We have our own signature, but there's all these ways that we look at what inspires you. Look at what you have fantasized about being. It gives you clues about who, your soul is asking you to explore being. And as far as soul contracts and energy signatures and everything, it's not only one way that these can manifest. It's like a kaleidoscope of different possibilities, but some of them are yeses and some of them aren't, and some of them are aligned and some aren't, but we still have to go through that. That's all part of figuring it all out, is trying and seeing and learning, and just keeping that curiosity without judging yourself. Stop judging yourself.
Right. Trial and error. That's how you learn.
Yeah.
Is there something that I didn't ask you that I absolutely should have?
Let's see. I guess, what's one thing that you could do if you have been on a spiritual path and you don't know what to do next? And, sometimes we come to these things where you're not inspired. You might feel blah, you might feel blank. And there's a few things that always seem to nudge it for people. And one of them is get out in nature. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to go camping. Just put your feet on the earth, because there's this sacred energy that is within your body. And you don't have to be skinny. You don't have to be perfect to love your body, because this is it. This is the vehicle for consciousness, for spirit, and include your body in your practices, without trying to fix things. Learn to go beyond your mind from time to time and beyond the intellect and feel what you're experiencing. Always tap back to your mind, of course, but let it interpret what you went through. Don't let it control what you're going through. And I'm talking about spiritual practices, magical practices, getting out in nature. There's just something to be said for getting your feet on the earth back to that electromagnetic field that's going to be beyond any words that I could try to say, and breathe a little more deeply. You don't have to go overboard with looking in a book and finding out exactly how to do pranayama or whatever. Just breathe a little more deeply from time to time. Turn your mind off, get out of your head and a little bit more into your body. Always go back to your head, of course, but just as a balancing, because of what's going on collectively. That is such a beautiful balancing thing when you feel stuck. So that's what I got. Excellent.
All right. So if people want to learn more or follow you or hire you or whatever, how do they do so?
So they can go to my website, tarawithtatiara.com. If you really want to find out what I'm on about, go to my link tree. It's Tara with Tatiara. You can listen to other podcasts. You can look at my current events, and you can look back at other past workshops and things that I've done. And there's just several talks, and you can see published essays and things like that I've had. If you want to know more about what I'm on about, and from the link tree, you can schedule tarot reading, past life reading, personalized archetypal embodiment workshops, and everything. And it's all there. If you want to figure out if this is something like you're ready to take some sort of next step and be in your truth.
And I saw that you go to certain places, so that if people are in those parts of the world, they could actually, go see you. And I imagine it's not just you. There's probably a group there. That's probably some type of event, so they can make a day or a weekend out of it.
Yeah, I'm Pittsburgh based, and I don't have too many other very far away events right now. But everything's available online that I do. Okay, excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much. Regards to your husband. And do you have a song that you think that would be a great outro for this theme? That's another thing I sort of have a little struggle with. I was thinking about Into the Mystic, then I was thinking Sweet Soul Sister, and then I was I don't know, but none of them really feel right. I do love Into the Mystic, but oh my gosh, it's funny. I'm going to end up saying something like, yeah, let's just do that. Let's just do Into the Mystic, or I'm going to lead us down a crazy Black Sabbath path or something. I'm okay with crazy Black Sabbath paths. Okay, Children of the Sea. Children of the Sea. That's with Ronnie James Dio singing, of course. And thank you for giving me this platform to talk about all the things I love so much. And Jeff did say hi. Jeffrey said hi to you. And so I'm very thankful, and I really enjoyed our conversation. Me too. Thank you. And thank you in regard, like I said, thanks to Jeff, and Children of the Sea, it shall be. All right, folks, thanks very much. Follow her. Again, it's Tarot with Tatiara, Tatiara. So you know the spelling. I know a couple times I put an R in there that what doesn't belong. Everyone who's listened to the show know about me and all the step peoples and the Tartars and of course my $1 billion idea that I will never do, which is cocktail sauce mixed with tartar sauce called Carter sauce. But I'll never do it. So there's your $1 billion idea, people. It's free to the world. I've given up on trying to make it happen. So. Anyway, give a nice rating, a review, tell your friends, share. That's the way the show grows. And thank you again to our guest, Nicki Ojeda. And thank you all for listening to Garden of Doom. And you'll hear from us later on.
Die, reaching for the stars, we blind the sky.